Joining us now is Mika Tosca, and you are the Assistant Professor of Climate Science at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And welcome, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, a big issue right now, obviously wildfires throughout the West Coast and beyond. Can you tell us about wildfire emissions, actually, and the effects that wildfires are having on climate change?
Sure, yeah. So, as you mentioned, we've been hearing a lot about wildfire in the news, both in the Western United States and in Brazil this past summer when the Amazon was on fire, which it has been, every year for the last however many decades. And so wildfires are a big driver of changes to climate, mainly through their emissions, and they emit a couple different types of things. They emit particles, which we call aerosols, small particulates usually comprised of organic and black carbons, and those can impact climate through modification of cloud physics and also through interception and reflection of solar radiation from the sun. And so that can modify the precipitation cycle. It can change the surface temperature. Wildfires also emit a lot of gases like carbon monoxide, which of course has implications for a lot of different things, human health, and also it's a climate change forcing agent, and also carbon dioxide and a bunch of other small trace gases. So in addition to the climate effects, there are a number of effects that wildfires have on human health, particulates, these harmful gases, that sort of thing. And while we tend to think that wildfires are so prevalent here in the United States, in California, we hear about it in the news all the time, most of the wildfires on Earth actually happen in the tropics, in the tropical regions, where they have huge implications. For example, in Indonesia and Borneo, on the island of Borneo and Sumatra, there are huge fires that rage occasionally in the fall, especially if there's an El Nino event, and that can really have very negative impacts on air quality in Singapore, for example, on the Malaysian Peninsula, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of different ways that wildfires impact us, both through climate change and also through human health.
I know you're also advising on an EOS special edition. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, yeah. So I'm actually the science advisor for the atmospheric sciences section of EOS. And this being sort of the centennial year for AGU, we're hoping to have a number of different special issues. And we thought that starting right in February that we would highlight wildfires, sort of the things that I was just talking about. And so we've solicited a number of different folks and groups around the world, really, to write articles for this special edition dealing with both the emissions and the human health impacts, and also modeling through climate models the effects of wildfires, both sort of locally and then also as they disperse around the globe and can impact much larger scale climate phenomena like the Hadley circulation, for example.
And let's talk about your participation on a panel at AGU, specifically on how artists can help solve the climate crisis.
Whenever I tell people I'm a climate scientist that teaches at an art school, like an actual art school, everyone's like, I don't get it. Are you an artist? Are you a scientist? So I actually am a scientist. I teach climate change to these art kids, and if you haven't had the opportunity to interact with young artists, young creatives, it really is like one of the greatest, coolest environments to be in. And they're so engaged and they're so ready to sort of take on this climate crisis, but oftentimes they feel like they don't know enough or they're not smart enough to actually engage. And I think that that's a failure on behalf actually of scientists and of the media, in that we just haven't really been able to capture like the imagination of the public. We've talked about science a lot, we've talked about climate change a lot, but we haven't really gone really to the imagination part of it, imagining futures and imagining a future world that's equitable, that deals with climate change. And I really think who better to address issues of imagination and object creation than artists and creative people and designers. And so I've been working with artists and designers, looking at ways that art can not only communicate climate change better, through like prettier graphs and better visualizations, but also do science better, do climate science better through different ways of engagement, through the design process, which often begins with interactions with humans and talking to actual stakeholders in this sort of larger scale issue. And so I'm kind of in the beginning stages of embarking on this really sort of radical collaborations between artists and creative people and scientists. And I see it as a path forward to solving the climate crisis.
Yeah, connecting the two for sure.
Yeah,
All right,
totally.
Mika, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.